So, really cool thing happened to me today. I was having a conversation with my daughter. Went it was really good, and it's amazing how you can have such good conversations with kids. It was just amazing. But one of the things that came up was, she had reacted inappropriately to her sister when she did something mean to her, and I had to say, well, I was looking for something to say, and I was trying to think, how do I teach her and show her that we need to react accordingly? So if somebody um, annoys you or says something, that may be kind of sassy to you, is it appropriate to hit them? And the answer should be no, it's not. You can't escalate it. So we had that discussion, and I was trying to come up with something to say to explain that, explain to her why that is how it should be. Because you think about, well, what makes that so? And I ended up landing on the Bible, and you have in the law of Moses, which is exposited in Exodus, Deuteronomy, Leviticus, you have this eye for an eye motif that kind of shows up as a guidepost for the law. And what is eye for an eye? And that actually opened up a whole new discussion I could have with her, and there's a whole lot that I could say. It was really good, and there was a lot behind it that I could talk about. Basically, one of the things that opened up was the whole purpose of eye for an eye was the resolution of blood feuds, and a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people today look at eye for an eye and they think, oh, that's so barbaric. Somebody does something to you, like the idea that you would do something back. And that usually that position comes from a couple of places. One, it comes from people that are super forgiving, which is great. That is the right place to come from. But the other place it comes from is people that are super privileged. People who, we live in a country, Americans live in a country, most Westerners live in a country that is very wealthy, very safe, and what happens, at least traditionally have been, and if somebody cuts you off in the parking lot, you say, you don't care. Why do you not care? Because everybody's fine. They're not going to hurt you. Nothing bad's going to happen. Why do you care if they cut you off in the parking lot? It's like, just get on with your life. So you're coming from a place of wealth and privilege, and that allows you to be able to just let go because there's so much more going on. And, in essence, like a good Christian religious person that feels the forgiveness of God and feels like God's given them life, it does come from the same position, but it's not a sense of security that could go away at any point. It's something that is eternal, and they feel for all eternity they're going to have this privilege, they're going to have this place, and so that's what gives them the power to forgive. But in essence, what it did is it resolved blood feuds, and what would happen is very common in ancient history. One family would harm another family. You would have one person harm another person. Like, let's say he insulted his head, and he said something that was derogatory, and the other guy would say, you dishonored our family, and he would project it onto his whole family, and because his family was more valuable than this guy's family. He would basically say, you owe us now a great amount because you insulted us. And it would just escalate. And so it didn't matter what it was. If somebody took somebody's oxen, you could go back and demand 2 oxen. If somebody, harmed another person by cutting off his hand, the family would go back and demand the other guy's life in payment. And the reason why was because, of course, people felt like, well, it's my family, it's our honor, everything about us is so important, and you don't matter. How dare you offend us? How dare you do this? And so this keeps escalating, and families keep hurting each other and going after each other for generation upon generation. You develop these blood feuds, right? So, so if somebody, and blood feud actually comes from the act or practice of murdering someone. So if somebody gets hurt, we have to avenge the blood, and then you can take that out on the whole family. And so there's just a whole slew of it keeps going and going and going. There's no actual justice or anything like that. So eye for an eye is it actually does balance the situation. So instead of somebody losing their hand, like I accidentally cut off a guy's hand, well, the retribution is I lose a hand, not I lose my life. And eye for an eye basically forced an end to unequal payment for the sin committed. And so it was in action. What it did was make people equal, because my hand is now not more valuable than my neighbor's life. And my neighbor's life is something sacred. It's not worth a small amount to me. It's worth the same amount as mine. So that's really the big innovation of eye for an eye, is that we're equals. And out of this is actually the foundation of equal rights. The idea that we exist on equal footing, that all men are created equal. Like, it really begins all the way back here. Now, beyond that, of course, we have, Jesus comes, and Jesus has a fulfilling message, because obviously, like, it takes care of things. When you say eye for an eye, there's justice done, there's retribution done. But eye for an eye doesn't necessarily resolve the spiritual, the relational conflict that happens. That is still broken. And so people still have to be able to forgive. And so Jesus introduces the concept of forgiveness beyond some kind of atonement, like paying a sacrifice. And so basically what Jesus does is say, we need to forgive. And the sacrifice is made by somebody else, because you cannot repay the sacrifice for all the sin that has been done. Everybody is in debt. It's the realization that everyone is in debt. Everyone's done wrong. Nobody deserves to be forgiven, but we all need to forgive each other and come from a place of forgiveness. And then on top of that, you also have Jesus's call, because obviously if somebody just continues to do wrong to everyone and everyone just forgives him and lets it go, well, then he continues to do it. The evil person continues to do it. The perpetrator continues to do it. So obviously Jesus's other call is one of what we call social justice, although that word has been very, very misinterpreted in modern times. But basically what social justice means is you watch out for the oppressed and the poor and the mistreated, and basically you ensure that nobody gets mistreated and harmed by those who continue to do harm. So there is social action and social responsibility that has to be taken in order to correct that. So, an appropriate response, a mature response in a Judeo-Christian tradition, is if somebody harms me, let's say they wreck my car and they run off, well, I can forgive them, and that helps the world go round. I'm not going to not continue to seek to destroy them and to harm them. But, instead of seeking to wreck his car or to damage him for the time he lost or anything like that, what I may do is just seek the help of the state or other community in order to make it right, or to basically make him accountable somehow, the person that hit me accountable somehow, so that they don't do it again, in order to show them they can't just get away with it. Because obviously people that continue to be able to get away with things that are illegal will continue to do them and can continue to do them. So you hold people accountable, right? Forgiveness is how the world works. We all need to forgive, but you control people that don't have forgiveness and love in their hearts by holding them accountable. And all people need to be held accountable. It's just at what level you held accountable to who. So this was a great conversation with my daughter. It allowed me to kind of go over this with her and say, look, honey, you have to be able to treat somebody fairly. And do you think it's right if she offended you somehow and said a mean thing to you, for you to elbow her and to hurt her physically? And she said, no, that's right, because your sensibilities are not more important than her physical health. And we're all equal. We have to know that we're equal with each other. And that, I listened to that, and that was just a huge lesson for people today. I think there's so many people that have just forgotten the idea of we're equal. They've forgotten the idea that we need to start on equal footing in order for us to respect each other's humanity. And what they've done is they've taken blood feuds, and they've taken revenge thinking, and they have turned it into they've made it academic, and they've turned it into a philosophy. And they've basically said that it's okay to take somebody of the same, that has something similar, either the same family, same ethnicity, same gender, same whatever, and group them with the sins of someone committed against them in that community. And of course, that's the, humanity should have been beyond that 4,000 years ago. It should have been beyond that. The law of Moses, which I guess theoretically would be probably more like 3,600, 3,400 years ago, but still, like a long time ago, humanity was taught this lesson. And there's just so many people that they don't know it. And I think it's because the wisdom of civility and these lessons are not prevalent in our society. You have a lot of people who are just trying to seek control by getting people riled up and getting them to hate each other and be angry with each other. I look at what happens in some of the universities, in politics. It can happen anywhere, though. Schools, it can happen in churches, it can happen, in anything. Sometimes people just don't consider the consequences, and they don't put the other person who offended them on equal value to them. And so, yeah, his life, because he offended me, because he said something mean to me, or he wouldn't sell to me, or he wouldn't celebrate me, or he wouldn't agree with me, his life has to be paid for it. He needs to be indebted for the rest of his life because of that. And people do that, and it's just, it completely goes against the foundation of, if we lose the idea that people are equal with each other, then we lose the foundation of civil rights completely. And history has shown us for hundreds of years, thousands of years, what happens when we lose that foundation. That foundation is vital. It's right there in the scripture, right there in the Bible. You can look that up. It begins with law, with the law begins with eye for an eye, and it goes from there. And it's all about reconciliation. There's a whole lot more I can get into, but that's the basic idea. Anyway, let me know what you think of that thought, and give me your opinions and whatnot. And I'll look forward to talking with you guys again.